On March 7th, 2026, right in the middle of the South China Sea, an invisible beam of energy locked onto a Philippine Navy frigate.
Right, a fire control radar.
Yeah. And, in naval warfare, locking a fire control radar is essentially the equivalent of pulling the hammer back on a loaded gun.
Exactly. But nobody fired.
Nobody fired.
Yep.
And today, we're looking at why. Welcome to your morning intelligence briefing. It is March 31st, 2026, and the title of today's deep dive is Mapping China's Military and Political Strategy. We're going to be looking specifically at current events across East Asia over, the past 2 weeks.
Good morning. Usually reading global news it's a bit like watching the reflections on the surface of the water. You see the ripples, maybe the occasional splash of a diplomatic statement, but you totally miss the massive tectonic plates shifting underneath.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So today, we are mapping those plates. We're treating this as a high-level briefing. We'll present the facts calmly, professionally, much like a classic evening news desk, just laying out the intelligence.
And to give you that clear, objective picture, today's deep dive is sponsored by ProWave AI, utilizing insights generated by Stylo News. Stylo News is this incredible AI-powered news application. And to celebrate their one-year anniversary, ProWave AI is offering a March special discount.
Which is a great deal.
It really is. You can use the discount code STYLOLOW at www.stylonews.com. It's valid until the end of March, but it is limited to the first 250 subscribers, so jump on that.
And the technology powering this briefing is actually a critical context for you. Stylo News is the consumer version of Stylo Intel Ops.
Right.
And that is a software suite designed specifically for enterprise operations. So we are talking about government, military, and multinational business intelligence.
Which means you, listening right now, have unique access to the exact same open-source intelligence engine that's designed to support global decision-makers. It tracks over 250 sources in more than 20 languages, and it synthesizes all of it in under 60 seconds.
It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, so let's put that engine to work.
Our mission today is to analyze the primary patterns of events in East Asia, assess the impacts at the local, national, and international levels, and really identify the perspectives of key decision makers.
Right, the people actually moving the pieces.
Exactly. We'll evaluate social media sentiment and traditional sources to see where different courses of action are supported and where broad, common viewpoints exist.
And just to be clear, we're maintaining strict neutrality here. We will look at the situation from all sides without bias and forecast the most likely upcoming events without, generating any fear. Just the facts.
Just the facts.
Okay, so let's begin in the Taiwan Strait. Because looking at the airspace data from early March, there was this sudden, complete cessation of Chinese People's Liberation Army flights around Taiwan.
Yeah, for 2 whole weeks, the skies basically went quiet.
Which is wild. And that silence perfectly coincided with United States asset movements literally half a world away.
The data shows that during that specific 2-week window, the United States redeployed key naval assets out of the Western Pacific.
Wait, so they moved them where?
Well, the Lincoln aircraft carrier and the Tripoli amphibious assault ship were moved to the Arabian Sea to support operations concerning Iran.
Okay, that timing feels way too precise to be a coincidence. I mean, it's like a tense game of chess where one player briefly looks away to check on another game across the room, and the opponent uses that exact moment to slowly slide their pawns forward.
That's a very apt analogy.
Because if the U.S. moves its heavy hitters out of the Pacific and China briefly pauses its flights, only to resume them aggressively right after, Taiwan detected 26 aircraft in a single day, with 16 crossing the median line. It really begs the question, did that U.S. redeployment fundamentally alter the balance of power in the Strait?
It's a fair question. It looks like a window of opportunity briefly opened up, but it might only appear that way on the surface.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The intelligence estimates from late March assess with medium confidence that China is not preparing for an immediate full-scale amphibious invasion.
Medium confidence. Okay.
Right. The physical location of those 2 U.S. ships in the Middle East, it doesn't negate the immense precision air power the U.S. demonstrated in that region during the same window.
Yes.
That demonstration acts as a global deterrent all on its own.
That makes sense. And, I was looking at those late March estimates, and what struck me is what was actually missing from the data.
The structural indicator.
Exactly. If a military is going to launch a full amphibious invasion of Taiwan, they literally cannot hide it. You'd need mass-trained rerouting to move armor to the coast, nationwide blood drives, massive reserve call-ups.
All of which are highly visible via satellite and social media.
Right. And none of those structural indicators are present in the recent reporting. Plus, there are the internal PLA purges and equipment maintenance issues we've seen documented. So, if they are preparing to invade right now, what is the actual strategic goal of sending 26 aircraft across the median line?
The intelligence consensus defines it as a slow squeeze.
A slow squeeze.
Yeah, it's classic gray zone coercion. An amphibious invasion is incredibly risky, very costly. The slow squeeze, on the other hand, is attritional.
It wears them down.
Precisely. By constantly crossing the median line, running blockade rehearsals, maintaining a heavy naval presence, you normalize the environment. You wear down the opponent's aircraft, you exhaust their pilots, and you apply continuous psychological pressure.
All without actually crossing the threshold into actual war.
Exactly.
Wow. So if Taiwan is experiencing this quiet, attritional, slow squeeze, the South China Sea is, like, the exact opposite.
It is much more volatile, yes.
Yeah, the ambiguity of the gray zone there is breaking down into direct physical friction.
The maritime domain further south is where we see a highly coordinated effort to assert physical control. In the East China Sea, near Taiwan, satellite and automatic identification system data, or AIS, revealed roughly 2,000 Chinese fishing vessels operating together.
Okay, wait, I need to play the skeptic for a second here, because we're talking about global military strategy, and you're bringing up 2,000 guys in fishing boats.
I know how it sounds.
Right. I mean, to the average person, a fishing boat is just a fishing boat. If I'm sitting in a multi-billion-dollar Philippine Navy frigate, why do I care about a fleet of wooden trawlers?
Because these are not independent fishermen just chasing a catch. When we look at the AIS data, which is the transponder system ships use to broadcast their location so they don't collide, well, these vessels were intentionally broadcasting their positions in massive 400-kilometer inverted L-shaped formations.
Wow. Okay, that is a geometric military formation, not a fishing pattern.
Exactly. It is the hallmark of the maritime militia. And honestly, it's a brilliant, albeit frustrating, tactic.
How so?
Well, by deploying thousands of ostensibly civilian vessels in coordinated blockade formations, a state can physically command a maritime space. They can disrupt international shipping lanes and shield actual naval operations.
And if a foreign navy engages them?
They are technically attacking civilians.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it creates profound operational ambiguity.
But that ambiguity is rapidly disappearing, right? I mean, let's go back to that March 7th incident near Sabina Shoal.
The radar lock.
Yeah, a Chinese PLA Navy corvette locked its fire control radar onto the Philippine Navy frigate, the BRP Miguel Malvar. For those listening who might be unfamiliar with naval mechanics, a fire control radar isn't like a standard navigation radar that just, spins around looking for obstacles.
Right, a standard radar sweeps an area. A fire control radar is entirely different. It concentrates a continuous, high-energy beam directly onto a single target.
Like a laser pointer on a target.
Exactly. It feeds real-time distance, speed, and trajectory data into a weapon system. It essentially tells an active missile exactly where to strike.
Which is terrifying.
The Philippine vessel actually had to issue a radio challenge before the beam was deactivated.
And that wasn't an isolated event.
Yeah.
Like on March 18th near Scarborough Shoal, the Chinese military expelled 2 Philippine C-208 aircraft from the airspace. We also saw separate flare-firing incidents near Mischief Reef.
All while China continues the dredging for its Great Wall of Sand military island building project.
Right. So to understand how we actually arrived at this flashpoint, we have to look at the deeply entrenched, opposing historical narratives driving all these actions. We have to maintain our neutrality here and look at both sides.
Absolutely. When you analyze sentiment from Chinese sources, outlets like China.com and the Hong Kong China News Agency, there is a very unified view that these actions are simply the legitimate defense of sovereign territory.
And that's rooted in the 9-dash line and their historical claims to those waters.
Yes, and it's deeply tied to the century of humiliation.
Yeah.
That was a historical period where foreign powers basically carved up Chinese territory.
So they view this as correcting a historical wrong.
From Beijing's perspective, restoring control over the South China Sea is a core national security imperative. They view the presence of Philippine vessels and especially U.S. military assets as aggressive foreign provocations.
I see.
So they see their actions, even the radar lock, as measured, lawful responses to protect their maritime borders.
Okay, but if we flip the lens to the Philippine and Western perspective, looking at sources like the Manila Bulletin and Defense News, The legal framework is entirely different.
Completely different.
The Philippines anchors its position on the 2016 International Arbitration ruling under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And that ruling invalidated China's expansive nine-dash-line claims.
Right. So from Manila's viewpoint, these shoals sit squarely within their exclusive economic zone.
Meaning the Chinese maritime militia and PLA Navy are operating illegally in Philippine waters.
Yes. When you view it through that legal lens, a fire control radar lock is not a measured warning. It is state-directed military coercion.
And when you have two sides operating on entirely different legal and historical realities, action always generates a reaction.
Always.
And regional neighbors are aggressively shifting their military posture in response to these encounters. The Philippines, for instance, they haven't just filed diplomatic protests, they've made a massive tactical shift by deploying Indian-supplied BrahMos missiles to northern Luzon.
And the BrahMos is a supersonic anti-ship cruise missile. Placing them in northern Luzon is highly strategic.
Because of the Strait.
Exactly. That region directly borders the Luzon Strait, which is a critical deepwater maritime passage. The Chinese Navy absolutely must transit through there to access the broader Pacific Ocean.
Oh, wow.
So by placing supersonic missiles there, the Philippines creates a highly credible anti-access bubble.
And their defense posture is changing internally, too. They recently arrested 3 locals acting as spies for China within their own military apparatus.
Which is a significant development.
Yeah, that signals a huge shift in espionage tactics. They're moving away from embedding foreign nationals to actively recruiting local citizens with existing access.
And while the Philippines fortifies its home territory, Japan is taking unprecedented steps outward.
This is the part that really surprised me.
It's historic. In a profound departure from its post-World War II pacifist security doctrine, Japan deployed its self-defense forces directly to the Philippines.
To participate in the Balikatan exercises.
Yes, the shoulder-to-shoulder joint military exercises.
I mean, Japan sending troops to the Philippines is an 80-year historical pivot. It basically rewrites their entire security framework. Between that and Japan deploying upgraded Type 12 anti-ship missiles in Kyushu, they're clearly transitioning toward a much more proactive defense posture.
The surface of the water in East Asia is becoming incredibly crowded. You have competing alliances, overlapping missile ranges, and gray zone fleets operating in very close proximity.
It's a powder keg.
And because the surface is so heavily contested, the intelligence data indicates China is quietly preparing the next frontier.
Rick is?
The undersea battle space.
Okay, this is a detail in the OSINT reporting that genuinely gave me pause. China is utilizing these large research vessels, like the Dongfang 3, to conduct massive ocean floor mapping operations.
Right, across the Pacific, the Indian, and the Arctic Oceans.
But, I mean, what does ocean floor mapping actually mean for military strategy? Why is that a threat?
Well, it's the ultimate application of civil-military fusion. On paper, sure, these are scientific, oceanographic research missions, but the mechanics of submarine warfare rely entirely on this exact data.
Wait, really? How so?
To effectively hide a submarine, or to hunt an enemy submarine, you need incredibly detailed topographical maps of the seafloor to navigate silently.
Oh, that makes sense.
Furthermore, you need data on water temperature layers, which are known as thermoclines and salinity levels, because those specific factors actually bend and distort sonar waves.
Are you serious? So a submarine can essentially hide under a layer of cold water where enemy sonar literally cannot penetrate.
Exactly that mechanism.
Wow.
The United States and its allies have traditionally held a massive asymmetric advantage in the undersea domain. Their submarines are quieter, and their acoustic tracking is far superior. But by comprehensively mapping these strategic waterways, including areas near Hawaii, Guam, and the Malacca Strait, China is actively working to erode that allied advantage. They are preparing the environmental intelligence required for long-term subsurface operations.
So we have a tense surface environment, we have meticulous preparation of the undersea environment, and multiple heavily armed nations operating with basically zero margin for error.
It's highly complex.
So how are decision-makers attempting to navigate this diplomatically without sparking an actual war?
We are observing a very deliberate, dual-track diplomatic approach from Beijing.
Go try.
Yes. For example, China's defense spokesperson, Jiang Bin, recently issued very strong condemnations of Taiwan for pro-Japanese rhetoric. He sharply criticized Japan's remilitarization and warned the Philippines against relying on external allies.
Very aggressive posturing.
Yes, but the OSINT sentiment analysis shows that on the very same day, that same spokesperson was advocating for peace, dialogue, and restraint in the Middle East between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. And China has also scheduled high-level security and defense dialogues with both the EU and NATO in Brussels.
So they're playing hardball locally, but playing the peacemaker globally.
Exactly. This dual messaging serves a very specific strategic purpose. China seeks to project itself globally as a responsible peacemaker and a mediating great power in broader international conflicts,
While simultaneously maintaining an uncompromising hardline stance regarding its regional core interests in East Asia.
Precisely. It isolates regional neighbors while heavily courting global partners.
And what about the regional diplomatic efforts? I mean, the Philippines currently holds the chairmanship of ASEAN for 2026.
Right. And they are leveraging that position to aggressively push for a legally binding South China Sea Code of Conduct by the end of the year.
To establish actual rules of behavior to prevent these conflicts.
Yes. But interestingly, while the Philippines is engaging in these multilateral talks, they're also negotiating a specific bilateral maritime law enforcement memorandum of understanding directly with China.
Like a Coast Guard agreement, essentially. But, I noticed a very specific caveat in the reporting on that. Manila is explicitly excluding any joint patrols in sensitive or disputed areas.
Right, that's key.
They're trying to establish communication channels to de-escalate without accidentally legitimizing China's territorial claims through, a joint patrol.
It is a very delicate diplomatic tightrope.
Which brings us to the forecast. Based on the intelligence reporting and the social media sentiment from the last 2 weeks, we can map out the primary courses of action that global decision makers are actually preparing for.
Yes.
So, looking at the road ahead, what is the most likely scenario that you, the listener, should watch for?
The consensus among the data sources points to a continuation of the current environment. We can expect sustained gray zone coercion, localized harassment of fishing and resupply vessels, and an incremental increase in de facto administrative control over contested features.
All without a formal legal settlement.
Right. Broad sentiment analysis suggests that an immediate, full-scale regional war remains the least likely near-term scenario.
Okay, well, that's somewhat relieving. But the key risk still remains accidental escalation, doesn't it?
That is the primary concern for all decision makers right now. When you have fighter jets being expelled from airspaces, thousands of militia vessels corralled near naval fleets, and fire control radars locking onto frigates, the system is primed for an accident.
Just one mistake.
A single miscalculation by a ship captain, a pilot, or even a drone operator could trigger a rapid, unintended military escalation. And diplomatic channels simply cannot contain something like that fast enough.
Wow. And to you listening right now, thanks for pulling up a chair with us today. You might be wondering why you should care about a radar lock near Sabina Shoal or a diplomatic meeting in Brussels.
It feels far away.
It does. But it matters because the global economy is entirely dependent on the free flow of goods through these exact waters. To understand the health of global trade, manufacturing inflation, and international security, you have to keep an eye on these specific indicators. Watch for changes in satellite imagery at the Yokosuka Naval Base in Japan, or the density of militia vessels near the Luzon Strait. These aren't just distant geopolitical disputes, they are literally the fault lines of the global supply chain.
And that is exactly why having access to synthesized objective intelligence is critical. It allows you to see the patterns before they become crises.
Which brings us back to the tool that powered today's briefing. As we wrap up, I want to remind you about Stylo News. It's a mobile and computer app that you, as an individual, can download right now to customize your own personal intelligence-style briefs.
It's a game changer for staying informed.
It really is. It pulls from hundreds of traditional international news sources, local regional papers, and platforms like X, and synthesizes it instantly.
It strips away all the noise, analyzes the sentiment, and gives you the objective facts, the differing global perspectives, and the key developments.
So here is your call to action. Subscribe to Stylo News to get your own AI-powered news on demand. Head over to www.stylonews.com and remember, use the code StylerLow for that March anniversary discount.
Well, our tone shifts a bit here as we close the briefing. Thank you so much for taking the time to engage with these complex topics calmly and thoroughly today.
We truly appreciate you joining the conversation as our third person at the desk. If there are specific global events or trends you want us to unpack in the future, please request topics for future deep dives and be sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thing to ponder based on today's intelligence.
Okay.
We talked about the shift from the surface of the water to the ocean floor. If the next major global conflict isn't decided by who controls the surface of the ocean, but by who has mapped the dark, silent topography of the ocean floor, how does that change the way the world protects the undersea cables that power our entire global internet and economy?
That is a terrifying and fascinating question. Stay curious, everyone, and we'll see you next time.